All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out. Can you guys hear me okay? So the amendment to my bio, and possibly the reason I got invited to moderate this, is I actually sold the company to IBM and became the VP of strategy, helping the company run its worldwide strategy operation. And in that, I discovered there's this industry which no one talks about called energy. And I thought this was the most interesting thing I'd ever seen. I thought it was one of the most, about to become one of the most dynamic industries in the world, and it's not its current reputation as an outsider, sorry to say, but I think it's going to become that. And I decided I would go write a book. So my current profession is author of an energy book on the rise of distributed and renewable energy. So that is, it's the stretch reason I get to be up here and introduce you and help moderate this group of true experts in the world of energy. So I'm going to let each of our panel members, starting with Greg, sort of give you their brief introduction, and then we'll jump to some questions and leave time at the end for you guys.
Hi, and good afternoon. My name is Greg Simmons. I work for Siemens Building Technologies, and I'm in what we call Enterprise Client Solutions, which means I'm focused on serving commercial, industrial, and institutional customers. And for those customers, we're really providing three major services. We're providing services in regard to energy supply that control price for customers. We're providing services in regard to energy demand, which are really focused on energy efficiency and constraining energy use. And the third set of services we provide are focused on achieving carbon and sustainability goals and meeting compliance obligations around carbon and greenhouse gas emissions reporting.
Hello, my name is Bill Moyer. I am with United Parcel Service. I've been with UPS for 30 years, always in and around the facility energy space. These days, I am the Director of Facilities Procurement on the purchasing side of stuff we put in buildings, and looking forward to the conversation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Bill, for introducing the panel here. My name is PJ Nelson. I'm actually with GE Ventures. However, I'm 100% dedicated to GE Current. So I'm serving as a product manager on our new platform where we're combining GE assets and capabilities such as solar, LED lighting, storage, electric vehicle charging, combining that with software, right, that runs on the Internet of Things platform, GE's Predix platform, to hopefully help our customers, not only reduce energy spend, but find new ways to leverage meaningful data, both operational data and environmental data. I'm from the University of Georgia too, so I don't know if there's any Bulldogs in here. Figured I had to say that. Figured there'd be some.
Of course there is.
Figured there'd be some.
Really?
Good afternoon. I'm Dickerson with Schneider Electric. Kind of like PJ, I'm part of a new venture within Schneider Electric. Even though we're a large organization that's been around for over 100 years in the United States since about 1992 through some of our established brands, which a lot of people don't know Schneider Electric, but they might know some of our power distribution brands, our IT brands like Square D, APC. We pretty much have a complete portfolio within the energy and infrastructure space to include homes, utilities, transportation, et cetera. What I do is from a business development perspective, though. So I go throughout the Southeast, the Mid-Atlantic, work with cities, enterprises, real estate developers to say, what's this nexus between all these different interrelated technologies, interrelated, and get them integrated so they actually achieve their mission outcomes, whether it's sustainability, greenhouse gas emissions, safety, resiliency, those types of things. I've been with the company for, goodness, 20 years now.
Hey guys, I'm Bryan Long. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Ecova. I oversee the Retroficiency analytics platform, which is actually a startup that I founded that Ecova acquired about a year ago, and it deals with energy efficiency for utilities as well as digital engagement. Ecova as a whole, for anyone who doesn't know it, is a sustainability and energy company. They manage bills for about just over 700,000 sites in North America, so they have a big footprint. I had never heard of them, so it's okay if you haven't. Hopefully you have. Ecova is actually owned by ENGIE, which is a large conglomerate energy company. Here in the North America, they have generation assets. They also do energy supply, and they're an energy solutions provider that's just getting into batteries and services as well through some recent acquisitions.
All right, well, thank you, folks. We have a very distinguished group of people, diverse perspectives on the industry, so we wanted to come up with a couple of questions that I think can touch on all that. And the one we want to start with is the trends. What are the, not so much what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years, although that's, I think, interesting and love to hear the perspectives, but what's happening right now? What are the things that are creating dynamism, challenges, and opportunities for, thank you, good. All right, good. All right, good, thank you. That just happened. And so what are the major trends happening in the energy space? So why don't we just give everybody a chance and we can start at the end and work our way back. Any thoughts on that?
Sure. So I think some of the major trends that I'm seeing, I'm going to borrow a term that I heard from a recent TED Talk that they talked about digital exhaust. And this was the idea that everything in our lives now are putting off just an enormous amount of data. And this really applies a lot to utility invoice information that's coming from inside a facility envelope, whether it's from smart meter technologies, whether it's from building automation systems, whether it's from other technologies and energy using equipment. There's a voluminous amount of data that's really becoming, in some measures, overwhelming for a lot of folks to manage and interpret. So one of the biggest areas that I see are analytic technologies, predictive analytics, other tools that companies are using to evaluate the energy information that they're receiving and then to translate that information into actionable intelligence. And so the goal of all of the information has value, but how do you really create something that is tangible to the customer, that creates an ROI, that creates savings, that results in an action that can be taken that reduces energy performance? Not energy performance, it reduces cost savings and improves performance. But that's really one of the major trends that I see.
I'll offer you 3 trends from my perspective. One's going to kind of play off of his. Obviously, the data side of the house is enormous, right? Today we talk about the Internet of Things, et cetera. But these are incremental advances that have been going on, at least for the better part of my career. When Internet hit the plant floor with the equipment from Schneider, that we could have embedded web pages to pull information directly off of transformers and these sorts of things. So now it's that much more available for everybody. The second one, the obvious one, is the rise of distributed energy opportunities. Once again, kind of incremental. There's been independent power producers for 30 years, but now those options are increasingly available and increasingly competitive. Hence, with some of the deregulation that's gone on out there since about 1992. And to that point, the last trend I would offer is really in the whole rate and tariff side on the utility side. When I started in the mid-'80s, most of the UPS facilities really kind of paid a set rate, a cost per kilowatt hour. Today, everybody's demand metered. Today, most everybody's time of use demand metered. Today, I can decide for a real-time pricing type hour-ahead relationship with my utility, whether it's regulated or not. And that's made for a lot of additional data and a lot of complexity as a consumer, because I'm on the retail consumption side. I'm not selling energy solutions. I'm trying to figure out how to use them to the best of my company's ability.
Thank you.
And I'm going to dovetail off of both what these guys, Greg and Bill, just described. A trend that I see is, all this data there's data everywhere, right? How do you make meaningful use out of that data? So, everybody hears the buzzwords. We've all obviously, back when the internet, exploded, and you hear cloud, you hear big data, you hear Internet of Things, all these buzzwords, software or as a service plays. It's really, a trend where a lot of these worlds are coming together. So, taking this one step further and kind of looking at, year over year, I think Gartner's predicting 20% increase in as a service offerings. So software as a service platform, data, which speaks to what we saw earlier with UrgentNet's, nice growth over the past year. So, how do you make the most out of these converging worlds? And be able to take the assets, right, that are within, a site or a facility, HVAC unit, set top, rooftop, the coolers, everything that goes with the lighting. There's all kinds of decisions, all kinds of expenses, and usually those are, tracked via disparate systems. So how do you converge those worlds so that you have an opportunity to collect meaningful data across that asset base? and enable the end user to make informed decisions based on what's meaningful to that particular person. So back to the exhaust, energy exhaust, providing something that's near real time, that's based on real, true charge calculations. These tariffs, being able to model a tariff after a utility provider, a negotiated tariff, be able to, ingest near real-time data from sub-meters that you have installed within a given site, and be able to not only audit the utility provider and streamline the processing of paying those bills, but provide the historical insights as to all of your usage and your spend, and really get into the predictive aspects of, how do I manage my assets? How do I control those assets? Instead of, just providing a solution where people have to go in and find the data themselves, more importantly, off of rules that are established, be able to proactively go make change that's going to reduce automatically your energy spend, or defer when you're using energy, or give you an opportunity to do a real analysis to justify return on investment for changing out assets. So really, at the end of the day, it's making sure you have meaningful use of that data that's environmental, operational, and we heard earlier this morning that it's more than just energy, right? How can you use this data to find new revenue streams, new opportunities for your business?
What do you think, Keith? What are you seeing?
It's a nice convergence, particularly from the revenue stream piece of it, and the way that people kind of come together. Little bit of a different trend from my perspective, from a smart city perspective. But when you look at the demographic shift, people are moving back to cities. We're seeing it here in Atlanta. Whether you're talking about Atlantic Station, or the renewal and revitalization of an old General Motors facility in the northeast part of the metro area. Folks are coming back to the cities, so there isn't necessarily infrastructure that's existing right now. In the case of the old GM site, it's in the northeast part of the metro area here in Atlanta, near the Beltway. It's a development called TOD, Transit-Oriented Development. Obviously, the highway's right there, so people can move around the city with their own transport and their vehicle. It's next to a MARTA station, so they can take the train downtown to the airport, what have you. There's even going to be kind of I'm not exactly sure how they're going to be doing it, but there's going to be some type of inside transportation mode where people can do a live, work, play. So they can essentially live, work, and play in the same area that they live. In the case of the General Motors facility, it's 165 acres going to be brought down into 6 villages. And I think what's interesting about those types of things, if you look at the built environment, that takes like 50% of the energy spend right there. So people want to have that experience of being able to live in a sustainable environment, whether it's transportation or efficient lifestyle, but they also want to have that interface with their energy usage as well.
Does it change how you think about planning for energy when you've got so much concentration of mixed residential and mixed commercial?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because you can have central energy plants. You can have obviously microgrids. You can have solar, other technologies. So depending on where you live, you might have a different mix of how you do this. In the case of the General Motors facility, the developer is looking at new revenue models of how to deliver those utilities as a service, whether it be water, steam, whatever it may be. Interesting. So, and it's challenging because in this geography, the Southeast, the cost of energy is relatively low. The lowest, well, I shouldn't say relative, it's the lowest in the states. But that being said, there's also other facilities, other developments in the Southeast that are doing this. There's actually a development in central North Carolina called Chatham Park. It's the 5th largest development in the United States since World War II. They have some very ambitious sustainability goals. I mean, it's 7,000, 8,000 acres, 22 million, projected to be 22 million worth of commercial, 22 million square feet of commercial, 22,000 residential units. And they have a goal of being 25% more energy efficient than, quote, comparable type of facilities or type of development. So how do you do that? Again, that comes back to that data piece. how you interfacing all these different variables and how people live in these types of developments. It's a totally different landscape. And that's a big trend that I see is
Even
those
more
new
data, more
developments.
complex data.
Yeah.
So interesting. Brian, you want to
Yeah, I
bring it
can
home
build
for
on
us?
that. I mean, the complex data, what Ecova is seeing on their facility side is really that being able to retain that data and sort that data is just table stakes at this point. They're asking to get to the next step, to the insights and actions. And they're asking, how do I do it better than my competitors? How do I do it, better than average? Or, they want to be in the top 10%. I think these guys stole all my other points because, when you're on a panel with talented people, that's what happens. But from another angle on the utility side, a lot of utilities, what we're seeing in our utility business is that they're trying to get beyond just selling electrons. So deregulated markets, regulations are changing. And so you have a lot of them thinking, how do I engage my customer? How do I become a partner? How do I do energy as a service? Like Keith was saying, how do I get there? How do I go from just being a pain in the butt that, you're just sending me a check every month to actually now you're going to think of me as a partner. So we're seeing that with a lot of utilities in the space as well.
Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you. So we've talked about a lot of innovations that are happening, a lot of focus on data, which is totally appropriate given the conference we're at here. And I think that is going to unleash a tremendous amount of value, and making sense of it is the ultimate challenge right now. But there are a lot of reasons that these and other innovations are going to struggle to come to market. And so one of the other questions I wanted to put in front of our panel is, what are the impediments? And we're going to talk, you'll hear some answers about obviously the regulatory environment, but let's talk specifically about what kind of regulatory changes would we like to see, what have we seen working in other places in the world and in the country. So Brian, since you got to wrap it up last time, why don't you start it for us?
Fantastic. Well, I mean, the regulation market, like we have a saying at Retroficiency and at Ecova for the utility side that the utility is about 10 years behind where their customers need them to be. The regulators are 10 years behind that. So that's sort of the where we are today, and at least on average. But what we're seeing is some really forward-looking utility commissions that are starting to change the rules of the game. So if you look at Hawaii, California, and New York, they're really being progressive around what they're allowing the utilities to do, especially in deregulated markets. But specifically, New York's is reforming the energy vision, which is REV, which they're telling the utility come up with new ways to serve energy as a service, right? And so they're unlocking that potential for the utility to go out to vendors like us to say, how do we do this, right? And so there, it's about how do you, not only present data, but actually in a meaningful way and get that next step, and then enable a marketplace for vendors. And how can the utility plan that versus the utility just being left alone on that? And as we distribute energy resources and things like that, as people start to really think about microgrids or disconnecting from the grid, the utility realizes, and I think they've seen it coming, they've been saying it for 30 years now, that eventually they're going to be left out if they don't change their business model. And I think those forward-thinking utility commissions, like in New York's territory in their ISO, once the proof is there, I think we'll see a lot of other utilities start to follow suit as well, I hope.
Good. Keith?
I think it kind of comes down to meaningful collaboration. So for example, for the last couple of months, I've been going to the city of Asheville, North Carolina. And it's a more progressive community. Obviously, it's near the mountains. And kind of what I've seen happen, and I think that Duke is to your point is there needs to be more progressive utilities. I think the Public Service Commission in North Carolina has been really good about Duke. I mean, they're starting to provide microgrid as a service. They're really looking at that meaningful collaboration. So in the meetings I've been involved with in Asheville, you've got people, obviously you're going to have the Sierra clubs and the real advocates. You have a cadre of industry, people like myself. You've got leadership from the city, from the municipality that makes a big difference. But then you've also got people both from the technical and the client management side from Duke there in those same meetings. And it's been a real good exchange, but it has to be with a specific goal and intent. In the case of Asheville, they're trying to either not build or delay the building of a new peaking plant. But there's some very specific strategic objectives. So if you have that type of consideration and meaningful collaboration, that's where the puck is going with that.
Well, you think about Hawaii and New York and Asheville. What is it that sparks the PSC and the utilities to take this more innovative approach? Is it the political leadership? Is it the people who live there?
I mean, I think you touched on it. It's needing to build new resources. So,
Okay,
it's
so-
very expensive for them to put in another feeder into New York City. So they'd rather get that from energy efficiency and demand response programs. They don't want to build another gas plant for peak.
So they're open and flexible and
It's a lot
to
cheaper.
avoid the capital
Yeah.
outlays. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. PJ, what do you?
Yeah, great points by both of these guys. Yeah, I think that we're, as a supplier, right, we're at an inflection point where in order to push aside this disruption, we have to enable our customers to make better decisions with what they have now. So if that's, automatically, evaluating tariffs that they could be on, that they're not on, presenting that information to them, helping negotiate better, call it contracted rates in the deregulated markets, have better insights into the day-ahead pricing.
So you think that if we improve the technology, that we're going to be opening new doors for opportunities?
Improve the technology, open new doors, but also, when the data, again, we keep talking about the quality of the data and the meaningfulness of the data and who is consuming that data. It has to be something that's going to enable the business owner to present a case that there's going to be a return that people believe in, right? That you can make those informed decisions and, get ahead of things.
Yeah, Bill was talking about insights into data. Bill was saying earlier when we were talking that the challenge with software today is that everything he sees, and Bill buys a lot of electricity, it looks like a pie chart. And how do you elevate? So I'd love Bill's perspectives on how do you sort of, well, first of all, what are the prevention, what's keeping us from these innovations, but also love your thoughts on the tech side.
I'd be a little careful on the regulatory. I mean, clearly that's a challenge, but, there's been a lot of deregulation. We've got 1,800 facilities across the U.S. Probably about half of them, we can do something on the energy from a competitive purchase side. And those locations tend to have a whole lot more innovation in them coming along because there's been that competition. So yeah, the regulatory hurdle is always there, but I think depending on where you are, it's less so. There are a lot of very forward-moving utilities at this point, it appears, from my perspective. But that challenge is there. The other one's the incentive side. There's, especially when you're talking about some of the federal incentives that are out there, just one, keeping track of it, beyond keeping track of rates, right? That's one reality. Then the other reality is all the incentives that are getting thrown at folks to do various things, whether it's free LED lights in the East Bay or, any sort of 30% investment tax credit here, but this particular technology only gets 10%. So there's that, from a consumer standpoint, is an absolute challenge. And to your point earlier, reference on the software side, yeah, we've seen a lot of software, a lot of energy software. I haven't found anything personally, probably haven't looked in 18 months, so I'm sure someone will tell me they got it, maybe sitting right next to me, but that really elevates the conversation that I need, or that we would need. Now, I'm a consumer with 1,800 buildings. We're never going to have people in every facility that even understand what we're talking about, because quite frankly, that's not their business. We move packages. That's our job, organizationally. I need software that makes those decisions a lot easier to understand, that can target and flag these sorts of things and bring it forward so that then you can go through the effort to try to find out what's going on. And I think that's particularly true when you get into interval data, where all of a sudden it's not just an invoice with various cost components to it, but it's 2,880 individual 15-minute increments in a 30 day month, and you're trying to figure out, was that right or was that wrong?
Thank you. Greg, you want to bring it home for us?
Sure, absolutely. I absolutely agree with a lot of Bill's comments, particularly when we talk about regulation. I think regulation can accelerate some of the innovation. We've seen some of this happening in Europe, as many of you are aware. there are requirements in Europe to have an energy efficiency plan for certain types of facilities. A lot of entities that hadn't previously prioritized these have been moving towards them very rapidly and have been initiating their energy plans, and that has prompted a lot of folks to look at their data, to be more innovative about how they're using their energy, and to prioritize their energy efficiency investments. But one of the key things I think is making sure that the innovations that are put forward have a clear ROI, or having a convincing value proposition that gets entities to invest in them. One of the things that I think about a lot, and I think our firm thinks about a lot, is that there can be an inverse correlation between the granularity of data and the value that the data creates. At some point, just having more data doesn't necessarily create more value. And in today's environment, what I typically find from clients is that there's a lot of risk adversity, there's a lot of competition for capital, and there are very high thresholds for return on investment for putting funds into any type of solution, and there has to be a clear business case around them. So it's incumbent upon vendors that are creating these systems really to be thoughtful about how we're taking all of the information and translating it into something that can be meaningful to the customer, that can produce cost reductions, can produce carbon reductions, can reduce the amount of energy consumed. And I think that as the technologies continue to advance, and as that chain is linked from data to value creation, we'll see a more accelerated curve of adoption.
You said something earlier that echoed the conversation I had this morning, which is, again, I'm new to the industry, but a lot of the buyers are looking for 2 or 3 year returns on investment for energy savings, which is shorter than I would have expected. And is that trending shorter and shorter? Is that because vendors are getting better and better, or what do you think is driving what I would see as a relatively short time frame for something that's got a pretty demonstrable return?
Yeah. Well, I think the gentleman from Verdantix that spoke had some information that codified a lot of things that I think a lot of us see in the market, right? Energy prices have been low and stable. A lot of firms expect, what did he say, 2/3 of firms expect that there won't be any energy price increases for the next budget period. And what I believe happens is that there's a capital constraint in firms in terms of their willingness to invest. And the capital constraints in energy, as Bill can probably talk about much more succinctly than I can, are competing with anything that the customer is doing to invest in any parts of their business. Okay. And so not only do the folks that are energy managers within their organizations have to try to reach these thresholds, which I have seen declining, to your point. A lot of times we would talk to customers years ago and they would be, well, we're interested in 5 to 7 years. Pretty much anyone in the for-profit sector, certainly that's not going to be a thing. If you're in that range, usually it's going to be a public sector entity, in my personal perspective. And we've really seen those thresholds come back. 5 to 7 is a high end. 3 to 5, in my view, is probably the most common answer. And under 3, increasingly, you do hear that. And that really constrains the possibilities for value creation for customer. There's just a limited amount of things that have a payback in that range that can be implemented. Utility bill management, energy commodity procurement have those kind of things. From an energy efficiency standpoint, maybe some controls technologies, certain types of lighting, but certainly no renewables are going to fall under that. Distributed energy technologies are going to be difficult to reach those thresholds. But if energy prices change, there may be a revisiting of that.
So the price of the energy is a direct driver.
Yeah.
And any other thoughts on that? So I have one last question I wanted to run by this group, which is very interesting to me, and I think it's appropriate here with Urginet. There's, I've been in many different industries, from HR to marketing to many industries like telecommunications and healthcare, and everywhere I go, I see this very rich startup ecosystem. I see Silicon Valley coming in and writing checks and getting wealthy, right? And in about 2007 through 2011, Silicon Valley tried to come into the energy industry and got their head handed to them, and they tail between their legs, kind of ran out of the industry and decided that energy and clean tech were bad bets. So I love the fact that Urginet's a great example of a growing, vibrant, young company. But I'm curious, as you guys, a lot of you from larger companies, is innovation in this industry going to come from startups? Can Silicon Valley play a role in this world, or is there other aspects to it that make that difficult? Anybody want to pick that one? Yeah, Keith?
Yeah, for example, what we announced, Schneider announced in March of this year, is actually that nexus between the startup community and large business. So we have an innovation center. It's in the Bay Area with a stated mission to find 10 new startups by the end of this year and actually blend them with our venture capital outfit called Astor Capital. I think we put in $50 million to the fund. So yeah, I mean, and being a long-term employee of Schneider Electric and at one time Siemens, where I've seen these new products, they're great. As a business development guy, I'm not going to start selling them until I can hold it and really get and feel it. So the companies like ours that are slow to respond and maybe have certain processes, protocols, cultures, ways we develop products, to have that entity in California, I mean, they're some of my new best friends. Because as I do my business development, I need to come to my clients or stakeholders with new innovation and new things and kind of have that cachet and maybe that backing of a Schneider. It's like, listen, we've got some innovative technologies. This is my team that's doing it. We're incorporating it. And we would like to test this at your facility, Mr. Client. It's like, they say, bring it on.
So,
bring it on.
So Bill, I'm curious, is you're making a lot of decisions for UPS and people knocking on your door with visions and pitches of improvements. I'm curious, are a lot of those young companies or those more traditional legacy companies? How do you break that down with the pie chart, so to speak?
I regret saying that. I think it depends on what part of the business you're in. If you're, obviously if you look on the distributed energy side, I mean, we've looked at everything under the sun that comes our way. Things that are someone's, currently got on the drawing board, which we can only spend so much time with, to things that, are actually out in the market, that are successful in the market, yet really haven't taken hold. Those are challenging. It appears to me to be very challenging markets to get into it if you're a prime mover type, where you're going to create the energy. The software side, I think, wide open. There's a lot of opportunity in that, and that's why I think you're kind of hearing that conversation, whether you're talking smart grids or whatever. My own personal perspective is I haven't seen the software that will produce that golden metric for us, the one that you just track this one and you'll know exactly what's going on. That's what we keep looking for.
Excellent. Any other thoughts?
I mean, I'll add one because I came from a startup and we actually raised money in 09 and 10 and we were clean tech. I mean, I think there was a big recoil on hardware. However, I think a lot of smart VCs like ours saw the ability in the low capital outlays to get into energy efficiency and that stuff. And I think you still see it today, but they're backing away from the hardware.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a strong believer that innovation happens at startups. That's why I went to one and started one and stuff like that. And I think there's still a lot of investment going there. It's, NG has a ventures group as well. It's investing in a lot of different startups and making a lot of bets. It sounds like Schneider is too, with Astor Capital, Siemens with their venture group as well. I mean, it's always been there. I think it's a shift of the specifics. And I think right now we're in an area where it's the software. And there's been some successful exits in the last few years that I think will reignite it. And again, for clean tech, it's always going to come down to the utility pricing. So I think you start to see some ebb and flow based on rates.
Okay.
Just a quick one. Just 'cause
We have 1 minute left.
Yeah, I think it was kind of interesting that GE Current is a startup, right? So, but truly, back to the software aspect of it, it is treated as a startup. GE knows how serious this is and what potential we have. And I have to admit, in my 20-something years in the industry, it's been fun, exciting, and hopefully we can make a difference from the software perspective.
Excellent. Well, I think we are out of time. So thank you to our panel for taking the time and helping put together some good thoughts for everybody. Thank you all for coming out, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.